Welcome to the Sleep Story Haven, your peaceful sanctuary where the whispers of ancient forests meet the gentle rhythm of moonlit shores. Here, time slows to the rhythm of your breathing. Worries dissolve like mist, and your mind finds the peace it's been seeking. Each story is crafted to guide you through enchanted landscapes and tranquil moments, designed to quiet your thoughts and prepare your spirit for deep, restorative sleep. So find your most comfortable position, close your eyes, and let tonight's gentle tale carry you to the peaceful dreams that await. Welcome to your Sleep Story Haven. Take a deep breath and let our story begin. The Circle of Ancient Dreams, a Celtic sleep story. Chapter 1: The Calling of Ancient Stones. The mist rolled in from the western hills like a gentle blessing, soft and silver in the dying light of evening. Sarah stood at the edge of the meadow, her feet bare against the cool grass, feeling the weight of months, perhaps years, of accumulated weariness settling deep into her bones. The modern world had taken its toll, with its endless demands and ceaseless noise, its bright screens and hurried conversations. She had come here, to this remote corner of the Scottish Highlands, seeking something she could barely name, a peace that seemed to have vanished from her life like morning dew. Before her, rising from the earth like ancient sentinels, stood the stone circle of Caermabon. 13 standing stones, each one weathered and worn by countless centuries of wind and rain, each one holding secrets that predated the written word. The stones were not uniform, some tall and slender like reaching fingers, others broad and solid like sleeping giants. Their surfaces bore the gentle patina of ages, streaked with lichen in shades of silver green and gold, marked by the slow passage of time that had seen empires rise and fall, while these guardians remained constant. The evening air was cool against Sarah's skin, carrying with it the scent of heather and wild thyme, the earthy richness of peat, and the clean sweetness of mountain streams. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the soft lowing of cattle and the gentle bleating of sheep, sounds that seemed to belong to a different age, a simpler time when the world moved at the pace of seasons rather than seconds. As she approached the circle, Sarah felt a strange sensation washing over her, a tingling that began in her fingertips and spread slowly through her arms, up her spine, and into the very center of her being. It was as if the stones themselves were emanating some kind of energy, invisible but unmistakable, like the warmth that radiates from sun-baked earth on a summer afternoon. The grass beneath her feet seemed to pulse with life, each blade connected to a vast network of roots and soil and ancient memory. The first stone she reached was perhaps 8 feet tall, its surface smooth in some places and rough in others, carved by weather into patterns that resembled flowing water or wind-blown sand. Sarah reached out tentatively, her palm coming to rest against the cool granite. The moment her skin made contact with the stone, she felt a deep vibration, so low and slow that it seemed to match the rhythm of her own heartbeat. It was like touching the earth's pulse, feeling the slow and steady circulation of some vast, patient life force. She closed her eyes and let herself lean against the stone, feeling its solid presence supporting her weight. The tension in her shoulders began to ease, the knots of stress that had taken up permanent residence between her shoulder blades starting to soften and release. Her breathing, which had been shallow and quick for so many months, began to deepen and slow, drawing in the clean Highland air and releasing it in long, gentle sighs. Around her, the mist continued to gather, not the oppressive fog of the lowlands, but something altogether different. A gentle, luminous presence that seemed to glow with its own inner light. It swirled around the stones in lazy spirals, caressing their ancient surfaces and pooling in the spaces between them like a slow-moving river of silver and pearl. The mist carried with it a sense of timelessness, as if this moment, this place, existed outside the normal flow of hours and days. Sarah opened her eyes and found that the world had been transformed. The harsh edges of reality had been softened, the demanding voices of obligation and responsibility muted to a distant whisper. In their place was something she had almost forgotten existed, a profound sense of peace that seemed to rise from the very stones themselves, from the earth beneath her feet, from the gentle mist that now surrounded her like a protective embrace. She began to walk slowly around the perimeter of the circle, her bare feet finding their way across the soft grass and moss-covered stones. Each step felt deliberate and sacred, as if she were participating in some ancient ritual that had been performed here for thousands of years. The stones seemed to watch her progress with benevolent awareness, their weathered faces bearing the wisdom of ages, their silent presence offering comfort without words. As she walked, Sarah became aware of sounds that had been hidden beneath the surface of ordinary hearing. The soft whisper of wind through the stones, the gentle trickling of a hidden stream, the distant call of a night bird settling into its roost. These sounds wove together into a subtle symphony, a lullaby that seemed to have been composed by the earth itself. Her heartbeat began to synchronize with these natural rhythms, her breathing falling into harmony with the gentle rise and fall of the evening breeze. The second stone in the circle was broader than the first, its surface carved with spirals and circles that seemed to draw the eye inward, creating patterns that suggested the movement of water. or the swirling of galaxies. Sarah traced these ancient markings with her fingertips, feeling the careful work of hands that had shaped these symbols countless generations ago. The carvings were worn smooth by weather and time, but they retained their power to evoke something deep and primal, connecting her to the long chain of human beings who had stood in this same place, seeking solace and wisdom from the eternal stones. She could feel the presence of those ancient visitors, not as ghosts or spirits, but as a gentle current of shared humanity that flowed through the circle like a slow-moving river. They had come here just as she had come, carrying their burdens and their hopes, their weariness and their dreams. They had pressed their palms against these same stones, had felt the same deep vibration, had experienced the same sense of homecoming that was now settling into Sarah's bones like warm honey. The mist grew thicker as the evening progressed, creating a cocoon of soft gray light that seemed to separate the stone circle from the ordinary world beyond. Within this protected space, time moved differently, not the urgent, choppy rhythm of clocks and schedules, but the slow, circular flow of seasons and tides. Sarah felt herself being drawn deeper into this ancient time, her modern concerns and anxieties beginning to dissolve like sugar in warm water. She paused before the third stone, which stood slightly apart from the others, its surface bearing the green patina of age and the delicate tracery of lichen. This stone seemed to hum with a different frequency, a deeper note that resonated in her chest and belly. As she placed both hands against its surface, Sarah felt a wave of emotion washing over her, not sadness or joy, but something more fundamental, a recognition of her place in the great web of existence that connected all living things. The sensation was overwhelming and comforting at the same time, like being held by invisible arms that had been waiting for her arrival. She understood, without words or explanation, that this was what she had been seeking all along, not escape from her life, but integration into something larger and more enduring. The stones had been waiting here for millennia, patient and unchanging, ready to offer their ancient wisdom to anyone who approached with an open heart. As the last light faded from the sky, Sarah completed her first circuit of the circle. The mist had grown so thick that the world beyond the stones had virtually disappeared, leaving only this sacred space suspended in time and silence. She felt no urge to leave, no anxiety about the approaching night. Instead, she found herself drawn to the center of the circle, where a flat stone lay embedded in the earth like a natural altar. The center stone was different from the others, darker, smoother, worn by the touch of countless hands and the weight of countless ceremonies. Sarah approached it slowly, feeling the energy of the circle converging beneath her feet, spiraling inward like water flowing toward a drain. But this was not a draining away. It was a gathering, a focusing of all the gentle power that emanated from the standing stones. She knelt beside the center stone, her hands coming to rest on its polished surface. The moment her palms made contact, she felt a jolt of recognition, as if she had touched the very heart of the earth. Images flashed through her mind, not her own memories, but the memories of the place itself. She saw druids in white robes gathering here under the full moon, their voices raised in songs that had no words, but spoke directly to the soul. She saw ordinary people like herself, seekers and pilgrims, who had come here across the centuries, each one finding what they needed in the timeless embrace of the stones. The visions faded, leaving behind a profound sense of continuity and belonging. Sarah understood that she was part of this ancient tradition, another link in the chain of human beings who had discovered healing and peace within the circle. The realization filled her with a warmth that seemed to radiate outward from her core, melting away the last vestiges of the stress and anxiety that had driven her here. She settled more comfortably on the soft grass beside the center stone, her back against one of the standing stones, her eyes growing heavy as the deep peace of the place settled over her like a blanket. The mist continued to swirl around her, but now it felt like a protective presence, shielding her from the harsh realities of the world beyond, and holding her in a space of perfect safety and rest. As sleep began to claim her, Sarah felt herself being welcomed into the ancient dream of the stones. It was a dream that had been ongoing for thousands of years, a continuous vision of peace and healing that anyone could join simply by opening their heart to its gentle power. She let herself sink into this dream, her breathing becoming slow and regular, her heartbeat matching the deep pulse of the earth itself. The stones stood sentinel around her, their weathered faces turned toward the mist-shrouded sky, their ancient wisdom flowing like a gentle current through the sacred space. They had watched over countless sleepers, had provided sanctuary for thousands of weary souls, and now they extended their protection to Sarah, welcoming her into their timeless embrace. In the distance, barely audible above the whisper of wind and mist, came the sound of water flowing over stones, a gentle brook that had been singing its quiet song since the glaciers retreated and left this valley to bloom with heather and grass. The sound wove itself into Sarah's consciousness like a lullaby, carrying her deeper into the healing dream of the ancient circle. As the night deepened and the mist grew thicker, the boundary between dreaming and waking began to blur. Sarah found herself floating in a space between worlds, held safe by the loving presence of the stones, her spirit beginning to heal from the deep weariness that had brought her here. The circle breathed around her, its ancient power flowing through her body like warm honey, dissolving the last traces of tension and fear. She was home. She realized, not the home of buildings and addresses, but the deeper home that existed in the connection between human hearts and the eternal earth. The stones had been waiting for her, just as they had waited for all the other seekers who had found their way to this sacred place. They would continue to wait, patient and unchanging, ready to offer their gift of peace to anyone who approached with reverence and an open heart. Chapter 2: The Mist of Memory. Dawn came slowly to the stone circle, not as the harsh awakening of urban mornings, but as a gentle flowering of light that seemed to emerge from within the mist itself. Sarah stirred from her deep sleep, her body warm despite the cool air, her mind clear and peaceful in a way she had not experienced for years. The stones around her seemed to glow with a soft inner radiance, their weathered surfaces catching and reflecting the pearl gray light of early morning. She stretched languidly, feeling the profound relaxation that had settled into her muscles and bones during the night. Every fiber of her being felt renewed, as if she had been sleeping not for hours, but for seasons, allowing the natural rhythms of healing to work their gentle magic. The grass beneath her was damp with dew, each blade sparkling like tiny crystals in the growing light, and the air carried the fresh scent of morning, clean and sweet and full of possibility. The mist that had enveloped the circle during the night had not dissipated with the dawn, but had transformed, becoming more luminous and alive. It moved with purpose now, swirling in patterns that seemed almost intentional, as if guided by some invisible intelligence. Sarah watched in fascination as the mist formed spirals and eddies around the standing stones, creating shapes that reminded her of ancient symbols: the triple spiral of the Celts, the endless knot of eternity, the circular dance of seasons. As she sat up and leaned against the stone that had been her backrest through the night, Sarah became aware of a presence in the mist, not threatening or alien, but familiar and welcoming, like the approach of an old friend. The vapor seemed to thicken in one area of the circle, taking on a more substantial form, while remaining translucent and ethereal. Gradually, the outline of a figure began to emerge, tall and graceful, dressed in robes that seemed to be woven from the mist itself. The figure approached slowly, its movements flowing like water, like wind through tall grass. Sarah felt no fear, only a deep sense of recognition and welcome. As the form drew closer, she could see that it was a woman, ageless in the way of beings who exist outside the normal flow of time. Her hair was long and silver white, braided with what appeared to be strands of moonlight, and her eyes held the depth and wisdom of ancient wells. "Welcome, daughter of the troubled heart," the woman said, her voice like the whisper of wind through leaves, like the gentle murmur of streams over stones. "I am Brigid, keeper of the sacred flame, guardian of the ancient ways. I have been waiting for you to find your way to our circle." Sarah found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "I didn't know I was looking for you. I only knew I needed something. Peace, maybe. Rest." Brigid smiled, and her smile was like the first light of spring breaking through winter clouds. The seeking heart always knows its destination, even when the mind cannot name it. "You have come to the place where healing lives, where the old wisdom still flows like an underground river, nourishing all who drink from its depths." The mist woman settled beside Sarah on the grass, her presence bringing with it the scent of herbs and wild flowers, the warmth of hearth fires, and the comfort of sanctuary. "This circle has stood for 3,000 years, she continued, her voice weaving stories into the morning air. "It was built by people who understood the deep connections between earth and sky, between the human heart and the eternal rhythms of the natural world. They knew that healing comes not from the rushing forward, but from the gentle return to the source." As Brigid spoke, Sarah felt the truth of her words resonating in her bones. The modern world had taught her to value speed and efficiency, productivity and achievement. But sitting here in the ancient circle, she began to remember older truths, the wisdom of cycles and seasons, the healing power of stillness, the deep nourishment that comes from simply being present in the moment. "Tell me about the stones," Sarah said, her eyes moving from one weathered guardian to another. "I felt something when I touched them last night, like they were alive." "They are alive," Brigid replied, her hand resting on the stone beside her, not in the way of animals or plants, but in the way of things that have absorbed the dreams and prayers of countless generations. Each stone holds within it the memory of all who have come here seeking healing, all who have pressed their palms against these ancient surfaces and poured out their hearts to the listening earth." The mist began to swirl more actively around them, and Sarah saw images forming in its translucent depths, glimpses of the circle's long history, visions of the people who had gathered here across the centuries. She saw robed Druids conducting ceremonies under the full moon, their voices raised in chants that seemed to make the very stones sing in response. She saw ordinary people, farmers and fishermen, mothers and children, warriors and healers, all coming to the circle in times of need, all finding solace and strength in its timeless embrace. "The first stone," Brigid said, gesturing to the tall, slender guardian that stood at the eastern edge of the circle, "is the stone of new beginnings. It holds the energy of dawn, of fresh starts, of the eternal possibility of renewal." Those who touch it with sincere hearts find that the weight of past mistakes and regrets begins to lift, making room for new growth and new hope. Sarah rose and walked slowly to the eastern stone, her bare feet finding their way across the dew-wet grass. As she approached, she could feel the energy emanating from the ancient granite, a gentle vibration that seemed to match the rhythm of her own pulse. She placed her palms against its surface and immediately felt a wave of warmth and lightness washing through her body, carrying away layers of accumulated guilt and self-recrimination that she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten they were there. "The second stone," Brigid continued, her voice following Sarah as she moved around the circle, "is the stone of flowing waters. It teaches the wisdom of adaptability, of moving with the currents of life rather than fighting against them. It reminds us that true strength comes not from rigidity, but from the ability to bend and flow while maintaining our essential nature." Sarah moved to the second stone, this one broader and more rounded than the first, its surface carved with spirals that seemed to suggest the movement of water. As she touched it, she felt a loosening in her mind and body, a release of the rigid patterns of thinking and being that had kept her trapped in cycles of stress and anxiety. The stone seemed to be teaching her, without words, how to move through life with greater ease and grace. The mist continued to swirl around them, and Sarah began to notice that it carried within it the faint sound of music, not the sharp, demanding rhythms of modern life, but something older and more organic, like the songs that streams sing as they flow over stones, like the melodies that wind creates when it moves through ancient forests. This music seemed to be coming from the stones themselves, a harmony that had been building for thousands of years, as each visitor added their own note to the eternal song. "The third stone," Brigid said, moving to join Sarah beside the stone that hummed with its deep, resonant frequency, "is the stone of deep roots. It connects us to the wisdom of our ancestors, to the strength that comes from knowing we are part of something larger and more enduring than our individual lives. It reminds us that we do not walk alone, that we are supported by countless generations of those who have gone before us." As Sarah pressed her hands against the stone of deep roots, she felt a profound sense of belonging washing over her. The isolation and disconnection that had plagued her for so many years began to dissolve, replaced by an awareness of the vast network of relationships that connected her to all of life. She could feel the presence of her ancestors, not just her blood relatives, but the spiritual ancestors who had walked the path of seeking and finding, of losing and recovering their connection to the sacred. "Each stone has its own gift," Brigid continued, her voice weaving through the morning mist like a golden thread. Each one offers a different aspect of the healing that your soul requires, but they work together like the instruments in an orchestra, creating a symphony of restoration that touches every level of your being. Sarah continued her slow circumnavigation of the circle, pausing at each stone to receive its particular blessing. The fourth stone taught her about the sacred feminine, the nurturing power that existed within her own heart and in the heart of the world. The fifth stone spoke of courage, not the aggressive courage of conquest, but the gentle courage required to be vulnerable, to open one's heart even in the face of uncertainty. With each stone, Sarah felt another layer of healing settling into her being. The constant tension that had lived in her jaw and neck for so many years began to release. The shallow, anxious breathing that had become her normal pattern deepened and slowed. The chattering voice in her mind that had provided a constant commentary of worry and self-criticism grew quieter and more distant. The mist seemed to be responding to her growing peace, becoming more luminous and alive. Sarah could see shapes forming in its depths, not the fearful phantoms of nightmare, but beautiful, comforting forms that seemed to embody the healing energy of the place. She saw great birds with wings of silver light, ancient trees with roots that reached to the center of the earth, flowing rivers that carried away all pain and sorrow. "This is the medicine of the stones," Brigid explained, her form becoming more translucent as the morning light grew stronger. "They do not heal by forcing change, but by creating a space of such perfect safety and acceptance that the natural healing power of the human spirit can emerge and do its work. They offer us a mirror of our own deepest nature, reminding us of the peace and wholeness that have always lived within us, waiting to be rediscovered." As Sarah completed her second circuit of the circle, she found herself drawn once again to the center stone. But now she approached it with different eyes, seeing not just a flat piece of granite, but a focusing point for all the energy and wisdom of the sacred space. She settled beside it, her back against one of the standing stones, and felt the combined power of all 13 guardians flowing through her like a gentle river of light. Brigid settled beside her, her presence both substantial and ethereal, like a dream that refuses to fade upon waking. "The mist that surrounds us," she said, her voice growing softer as the morning progressed, "is the memory of the earth itself. It carries within it the dreams and visions of all who have sought healing in this place, the accumulated wisdom of countless generations who have learned to live in harmony with the natural world." Sarah breathed deeply, drawing the mist into her lungs, feeling it circulate through her body like a healing elixir. With each breath, she felt more of the modern world's harsh edges being softened, more of its demanding voices being quieted. In their place, a profound stillness was growing, a silence that was not empty, but full, pregnant with possibility, alive with potential. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, her voice barely disturbing the perfect peace of the moment. "Now you rest," Brigid replied, her hand touching Sarah's forehead with a coolness that seemed to reach all the way to her bones. "Now you allow the deeper healing to begin. The stones will guard your sleep. The mist will carry your dreams. And the ancient wisdom of this place will weave itself into your very cells, transforming you from the inside out." As Sarah's eyes grew heavy, she felt the mist thickening around them, creating a cocoon of perfect safety and silence. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Brigid's gentle smile. And the last thing she heard was the eternal song of the stones, weaving its timeless melody through her dreams. The mist of memory enveloped her completely, carrying her into the deep, healing sleep that her soul had been craving for so long. In this sacred space, held safe by the ancient guardians, she could finally let go of the burden of consciousness and allow the natural rhythms of restoration to work their patient magic. Chapter 3: The Language of Stone. In the depths of her healing sleep, Sarah found herself walking through landscapes that existed somewhere between memory and dream, between the solid earth and the realms of pure possibility. The mist that had enveloped the stone circle had become a bridge between worlds, carrying her consciousness into spaces where the ancient stones could speak directly to her heart, their voices not heard but felt, their wisdom not understood but absorbed. She stood in a vast library where the books were made of stone, their pages carved with symbols that shifted and flowed like living water. Each stone book contained the compressed wisdom of centuries, the accumulated knowledge of countless souls who had sought healing and found it in the embrace of the earth. As Sarah approached these stone volumes, she discovered that she could read them not with her eyes, but with her fingertips, the carved symbols transferring their meaning directly into her understanding through the simple act of touch. The first stone book she touched told the story of the circle's creation, showing her visions of the people who had chosen this particular spot for their sacred space. She saw them moving slowly across the landscape, each one carrying a large stone, their movements ritualized and reverent. They had not chosen this place randomly. It lay at the intersection of underground streams, at a point where the earth's natural energy converged and concentrated, creating a nexus of power that could amplify and focus the healing intentions of those who gathered here. The builders had been guided by a deep understanding of the subtle energies that flow through the landscape like invisible rivers. They could feel the ley lines that crisscross the earth, the ancient pathways along which power travels from sacred site to sacred site. This particular location sat at the confluence of 3 such lines, making it a natural amplifier for any healing work undertaken within its boundaries. As Sarah continued to read the stone books, she learned about the different types of stones that had been chosen for the circle. Each one had been selected not just for its size and shape, but for the particular type of mineral matrix that made up its structure. The granite contained quartz crystals that could hold and transmit energy, while the traces of mica gave it the ability to reflect and amplify healing intentions. Other stones in the circle contained different minerals: feldspar for grounding, hornblende for protection, biotite for transformation. But beyond their geological properties, each stone had been chosen for its individual character, its unique personality that had been shaped by millennia of geological processes. The people who built the circle had spent months getting to know each stone, sitting with it, listening to its particular song, understanding its special gifts. Only when this deep relationship had been established was the stone finally moved to its designated position in the sacred space. The second stone book revealed the ceremonies that had been conducted in the circle over the centuries. Sarah saw Druids in white robes gathered under the full moon, their voices raised in chants that seemed to make the stones themselves vibrate in harmonic response. She witnessed healing rituals where the sick and wounded were brought to lie in the center of the circle, surrounded by the loving energy of both the stones and the community that had gathered to support them. She saw seasonal celebrations where the entire community would gather to mark the turning of the year, to honor the cycles of planting and harvest, of birth and death and rebirth. During these ceremonies, the circle became a focal point for the collective intention of the people, a place where individual healing merged with community healing, where personal transformation became part of the larger transformation of the world. But not all the visitors to the circle had come as part of organized ceremonies. Sarah saw countless individuals who had made the pilgrimage alone, carrying their private sorrows and their secret hopes. She saw mothers who had lost children, warriors returning from battle, farmers whose crops had failed, lovers who had been separated by circumstances beyond their control. Each one had found in the circle exactly what they needed, not always what they expected, but always what their souls required for healing. The third stone book was different from the others. Instead of showing her the history of the circle, it began to teach her about the nature of healing itself. Sarah learned that true healing was not the elimination of symptoms, but the restoration of harmony, the return to to a state of balance between the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects of being. The stones facilitated this restoration, not by imposing change from the outside, but by creating conditions in which the body's own wisdom could reassert itself. She saw that illness and suffering were often the result of disconnection from the natural world, from community, from the deeper rhythms of life that pulse through all existence. The modern world, with its emphasis on speed and separation, on competition and consumption, had severed many of these vital connections, leaving people feeling isolated and depleted. The stone circle served as a place of reconnection, where the broken links could be repaired and the flow of life-giving energy could be restored. As Sarah absorbed this wisdom, she felt it working within her own body and mind. The chronic tension that had lived in her shoulders began to release as she reconnected with the supportive energy of the earth. The anxiety that had been her constant companion started to dissolve as she remembered her place in the larger web of existence. The insomnia that had plagued her for months began to lift as she synchronized her rhythms with the deeper cycles of the natural world. The fourth stone book taught her about the power of intention and attention. She learned that the human mind was like a lens that could focus energy and direct it towards specific purposes. When this focused attention was combined with the pure intention to heal, not just oneself, but all beings, it created a force that could literally reshape reality at the quantum level. The ancient builders of the circle had understood this principle and had incorporated it into the very structure of their sacred space. The arrangement of the stones created a natural focusing mechanism, concentrating and amplifying the healing intentions of those who worked within its boundaries. The circular shape ensured that energy would flow continuously, without stagnation or dissipation, creating a perpetual current of renewal and restoration. Sarah began to understand that her own healing was not separate from the healing of others, but part of a vast network of interconnected wellness that included all beings. As she allowed the stones to work their gentle magic within her, she was simultaneously contributing to the healing of the world, adding her own note to the great song of restoration that had been building for millennia. The fifth stone book revealed the secret of the mist that had enveloped the circle. She learned that this was not ordinary water vapor, but a manifestation of the Earth's own consciousness, a visible expression of the planet's desire to nurture and heal its children. The mist served as a medium for transmission, carrying healing energy from the stones to those who sought it, while also carrying away the pain and trauma that people released during their healing process. This mystical mist was alive with the memories of all who had found healing in the circle. It carried within its silvery depths the accumulated wisdom of countless souls who had made the journey from suffering to wholeness, from separation to connection, from despair to hope. By breathing in this mist, Sarah was literally absorbing the experiences and insights of thousands of predecessors who had walked the path of healing before her. As she continued to read the stone books, Sarah's understanding deepened and expanded. She learned about the healing properties of sound and how the stones had been positioned to create optimal acoustics for chanting and toning. She discovered the significance of the astronomical alignments built into the circle's design, and how the movement of sun, moon, and stars amplified the healing power available at different times of the year. She learned about the plant allies that grew naturally around the circle, the herbs and flowers that had been drawn to this sacred space by the same energies that made it a powerful place of healing. Each plant had its own medicinal properties, but more importantly, each one served as a bridge between the mineral kingdom of the stones and the human kingdom of those who sought healing. The sixth stone book was written in a language she had never seen before, symbols that seemed to shift and dance on the stone pages like living things. As she watched, Sarah realized that this was the language of the heart, the universal communication system that all beings share when they move beyond the limitations of words and thoughts. The symbols spoke directly to her soul, conveying truths that could never be captured in ordinary language. She learned that healing was essentially a return to love, not the conditional, possessive love of human relationships, but the unconditional, all-encompassing love that is the fundamental nature of existence itself. Every form of suffering, every type of illness, every experience of pain or separation was ultimately a forgetting of this love, a temporary amnesia that could be healed through reconnection with the source. The stones served as constant reminders of this love, their ancient presence bearing witness to the unchanging truth that love is the creative force that holds all things together. By aligning herself with their energy, Sarah was aligning herself with love itself, allowing it to flow through her being and transform everything it touched. As her understanding deepened, Sarah felt herself beginning to change at the cellular level. The healing was happening not just in her mind or emotions, but in the very structure of her physical body. Old patterns of tension and dis-ease were being replaced by new patterns of harmony and flow. DNA that had been damaged by stress and toxins was being repaired and regenerated. Neural pathways that had been carved by years of anxious thinking were being rewired to support peace and well-being. The seventh stone book revealed to her the future of healing, showing her visions of a time when humanity would remember its connection to the earth and would build societies based on cooperation rather than competition, on healing rather than harming. She saw communities gathered around stone circles like this one, using the ancient wisdom to create new forms of medicine that addressed not just symptoms, but root causes, that healed not just individuals, but entire ecosystems. In these visions, the stone circles served as nodes in a vast network of healing energy that spanned the globe, each one connected to all the others by invisible threads of light and love. As more people remembered how to work with these ancient technologies, the healing power available to humanity would increase exponentially, creating the possibility of transformation on a planetary scale. Sarah understood that her own healing was part of this larger pattern, that by allowing herself to be restored to wholeness, she was contributing to the healing of the collective consciousness of humanity. The work she was doing here in the circle was not selfish, but deeply altruistic, a gift not just to herself, but to all beings who would benefit from the increased love and wisdom she would carry into the world. As the stone books began to fade from her vision, Sarah felt herself being drawn back toward waking consciousness. But she carried with her the deep understanding she had gained, the wisdom that had been downloaded directly into her cells and soul. She knew now that healing was not something that happened to her, but something that happened through her, a natural expression of the life force that animated all existence. The language of stone had spoken to her in ways that transcended words, teaching her truths that could only be learned through direct experience. As she began to emerge from the depths of her healing sleep, she felt fundamentally changed, as if she had been taken apart and reassembled according to a more harmonious design. The stones continued their patient work around her, their ancient voices weaving the final threads of transformation into the fabric of her being. Soon, she would wake to find herself renewed, restored, and ready to receive the deeper teachings that awaited her in the sacred circle. Chapter 4: The Wisdom of Druids. As consciousness returned to Sarah, like a gentle tide flowing over smooth stones, she found herself emerging from depths of rest that seemed to have lasted for seasons rather than hours. The quality of light around the circle had shifted again, becoming golden and warm, suggesting that the day had progressed toward afternoon. But time itself felt different here, more elastic and flowing, as if the urgent tick of clocks had been replaced by the slower rhythm of heartbeats and breath. The mist that had enveloped her throughout her healing sleep had not dissipated, but had transformed once more, becoming more structured and purposeful in its movement. As Sarah sat up slowly stretching muscles that felt both completely relaxed and vibrantly alive. She noticed that the vapor was forming distinct patterns around the stones, creating what appeared to be a series of doorways or portals between the ancient guardians. Through one of these misty doorways stepped a figure that seemed to materialize from the very air itself. At first, Sarah thought it might be Brigid returning, but as the form became more solid and defined, she realized this was someone entirely different. The newcomer was tall and dignified, with long silver hair and a beard that flowed like water over robes of deep forest green. His eyes held the same timeless quality she had seen in Brigid's, but where hers had been wells of feminine wisdom, his were like ancient oaks that had witnessed centuries pass beneath their branches. "I am Amergin," the figure said, his voice carrying the depth and resonance of wind through ancient forests. "I am the keeper of the old songs, the guardian of wisdom that flows like hidden rivers beneath the surface of the world. I have been watching your healing unfold, daughter of the seeking heart. And now, I come to share with you the deeper teachings that the stones have prepared you to receive." Sarah felt no surprise at his appearance, only a sense of rightness and completion, as if she had been unconsciously waiting for this moment throughout her entire journey. The profound rest and healing she had experienced had prepared her to receive wisdom that would have been overwhelming to her earlier, stressed state of being. Now, she felt open and receptive, like a clear pool ready to reflect the sky. Amergin settled beside her on the soft grass, his movements flowing with the same natural grace that characterized everything in this sacred space. As he seated himself, Sarah noticed that the very ground seemed to respond to his presence, flowers blooming where his feet had touched the earth, the grass growing more lush and green in a circle around him. "The stones have shared with you their individual gifts," he began, his words seeming to emerge from some deep place within the earth itself. "They have shown you the language of mineral consciousness, the slow and patient wisdom of beings who measure time in geological ages rather than heartbeats. But there is another layer of understanding available to you here, another current of wisdom that flows through this sacred space like an underground river." As he spoke, Sarah became aware of a subtle shift in the energy around them. The mist began to glow with a soft, golden light, and she could hear what sounded like distant singing, voices raised in harmonies that seemed to come from every direction at once. The songs had no words that she could distinguish, but they spoke directly to her soul, conveying meanings that transcended language. "These are the voices of my people," Amergin explained, gesturing to the luminous mist that swirled around them. "The Druids who served as bridges between the human world and the realm of spirit, who understood that true healing must address not just the body, but the soul. Not just the individual, but the community. Not just the present moment, but the eternal patterns that connect all things. The singing grew stronger, and Sarah began to see shapes forming in the mist, figures in white robes moving in slow, ritualized patterns around the circle. They were translucent and ethereal, like memories made visible. But their presence filled the space with a profound sense of peace and reverence. She watched in wonder as they performed what appeared to be an ancient ceremony. Their movements synchronized with the deeper rhythms of earth and sky. "We were the keepers of the old ways," Amergin continued, his voice weaving through the ghostly ceremony like a golden thread. "We understood that healing was not a matter of technique, but of relationship with the earth, with the cosmos, with the invisible forces that animate all existence. Our medicine was not found in herbs alone, though we knew their properties well, but in our ability to restore the broken connections that are the true source of all suffering." As Sarah watched the spectral Druids move through their ceremony, she began to understand something profound about the nature of healing itself. These ancient practitioners had not seen themselves as healers in the modern sense, imposing treatments from the outside. Instead, they had served as facilitators, creating conditions in which the natural healing wisdom of the body and soul could reassert itself. "The first principle of our healing art," Amergin said, raising his staff, a gnarled piece of oak that seemed to pulse with its own inner light, "was the recognition that all beings are interconnected, part of a vast web of relationship that includes not just the human family, but all of creation. When this web is damaged, when the connections are severed or weakened, dis-ease and suffering are the inevitable result." Sarah felt this truth resonating in her own body, recognizing how her own healing had begun with the restoration of her connection to the earth, to the stones, to the ancient wisdom that flowed through this sacred place. The isolation and disconnection that had characterized her life in the modern world had been the source of her suffering, and the reconnection she was experiencing here was the source of her healing. "The second principle," Amergin continued, "was the understanding that healing must address the whole being, body, mind, and spirit, as well as the environment in which that being exists. We could not heal a person while leaving them in circumstances that would recreate their illness, any more than we could heal a poisoned stream while leaving the source of contamination intact." The ghostly Druids began to chant in a language that predated words, their voices creating harmonies that seemed to resonate in Sarah's bones. As the sound washed over her, she felt another wave of healing energy flowing through her system, addressing patterns of imbalance that she had not even known existed. The chanting seemed to be recalibrating her entire energy field, tuning her inner frequencies to match the deeper harmonies of the natural world. The third principle, Amergin said, his own voice joining the ethereal chorus, was the recognition that true healing requires the active participation of the one being healed. We could create the conditions, provide the knowledge, offer the support, but the actual work of transformation could only be done by the individual themselves in partnership with the healing forces of creation. Sarah understood this principle intimately, recognizing how her own healing had required her active choice to surrender, to trust, to open herself to the wisdom of the stones and the ancient knowledge that flowed through this place. No external force could have imposed this transformation upon her. It had to emerge from her own deep desire for wholeness and her willingness to release the patterns that no longer served her. The spectral Druids began to move closer, their translucent forms surrounding Sarah and Amergin in a circle of loving presence. As they drew near, Sarah could feel the accumulated wisdom of their centuries of practice flowing toward her like a gentle stream. Each one had been a master of the healing arts, and together they represented a collective understanding of wellness that far surpassed anything available in the modern world. The fourth principle, Amergin continued, his staff now glowing with a light that seemed to come from within the wood itself, was the knowledge that healing is not a destination, but a process, not a static state, but a dynamic flow. True health is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of resilience, not the elimination of change, but the ability to dance gracefully with the ever-shifting currents of existence. As he spoke these words, Sarah felt something fundamental shifting in her understanding of her own healing journey. She had come to the circle seeking to escape from the challenges and stresses of her life. But now, she began to see that true healing lay not in escape, but in transformation, in developing the inner resources that would allow her to meet whatever life brought with greater wisdom, compassion, and strength. The ghostly Druids began to extend their hands toward her, and Sarah felt currents of healing energy flowing from their ethereal forms into her own being. Each touch was like a blessing, a transmission of knowledge and power that had been refined over centuries of practice. She felt her energy field expanding and strengthening, her capacity for healing, both of herself and others, growing exponentially. The fifth principle, Amergin said, and now his voice seemed to be coming from everywhere at once, from the stones themselves, from the earth beneath her feet, from the air that filled her lungs, was the understanding that the healer and the healed are not separate beings, but aspects of the same consciousness, expressions of the same universal life force that animates all existence. This final principle hit Sarah like a revelation, transforming her understanding, not just of healing, but of the very nature of existence itself. She saw that the boundaries she had always perceived between herself and others, between herself and the natural world, between herself and the divine, were illusions created by limited perception. In truth, there was only one life, one consciousness, one love expressing itself through countless forms and experiences. As this understanding settled into her being, Sarah felt the last vestiges of separation and isolation dissolving completely. She was not alone, had never been alone, could never be alone, because she was part of the infinite web of existence that connected all things. The healing she had received was not something foreign imposed upon her, but the natural expression of her own deepest nature, her own inherent wholeness finally being allowed to manifest. The spectral Druids began to fade as the afternoon light grew golden and warm, but their blessing remained, woven into the very fabric of Sarah's being. As they disappeared, Amergin placed his hand on her forehead, and she felt a final transmission of energy that seemed to awaken capacities within her that had been dormant for lifetimes. "You carry within you now the seeds of the ancient wisdom," he said, his own form beginning to become translucent as the ceremony reached its completion. "These seeds will grow and flourish as you return to your life in the outer world, transforming not only your own experience, but the lives of all those you touch. Remember always that you are not separate from the healing power of the universe. You are that power, expressing itself through the unique vehicle of your individual consciousness." As Amergin faded into the golden mist, Sarah felt a profound sense of completion and integration. The teachings of the Druids had not been given to her as mere concepts to understand, but as living energies to embody practical wisdom that would transform every aspect of her existence. She felt like a vessel that had been filled with liquid light, a chalice that now contained the concentrated essence of centuries of healing knowledge. The stones around her seemed to pulse with approval and satisfaction, their ancient task of transmission complete. The mist continued to swirl gently around the circle, but now it carried within it not just the memory of healing, but the promise of future transformation. Sarah understood that her time in the circle was not ending, but evolving, moving from receiving healing to embodying it, from being transformed to becoming a transformer. The wisdom of the Druids flowed through her like honey through warm bread, sweet and nourishing, and completely natural. She felt ready now for whatever deeper teachings awaited her, prepared by the ancient knowledge to receive even greater gifts of understanding and power. The circle held her in its loving embrace, patient and eternal, ready to reveal the next layer of its infinite wisdom. Chapter 5: The Eternal Dance. The golden afternoon light continued to deepen around the circle, painting the ancient stones in shades of amber and copper that seemed to emerge from within their weathered surfaces rather than falling upon them from above. Sarah remained seated at the center of the sacred space, but she was no longer the same person who had arrived here seeking rest and healing. Layer by layer, the wisdom and energy of the stones had transformed her, and now she felt like a tuning fork that had been struck by divine hands, vibrating in perfect harmony with the deeper frequencies of creation. As the last echoes of Amergin's teaching settled into her consciousness, Sarah became aware of a new quality in the energy around her. The mist that had been her constant companion throughout this journey began to dance with an increased vitality, swirling in patterns that suggested celebration rather than ceremony. The very air seemed to sparkle with joy, as if the universe itself was pleased with the transformation that had taken place within the sacred circle. From somewhere in the distance came the sound of music, not the ghostly chanting of the Druids, but something altogether more joyful and alive. It was the music of the spheres, the cosmic symphony that plays eternally in the background of existence, but is usually drowned out by the noise of ordinary consciousness. Now, with her awareness expanded and her energy field attuned to the deeper harmonies of creation, Sarah could hear it clearly. Pipes and harps and voices raised in songs of pure celebration. The stones themselves seemed to be responding to this celestial music, their ancient surfaces beginning to glow with an inner light that pulsed in rhythm with the distant melodies. Sarah watched in wonder as the light grew stronger, until each stone appeared to be carved from crystallized starlight, their forms both solid and translucent, earthly and ethereal at the same time. As the music grew louder and more complex, figures began to appear in the spaces between the stones, not the solemn Druids of the previous vision, but beings of pure light and joy, who moved with the fluid grace of dancers who had been practicing their steps for eternity. They were tall and radiant, neither fully male nor female, but somehow containing the essential qualities of both, their forms shifting and flowing like aurora borealis made manifest. "Welcome to the eternal dance," one of them said, approaching Sarah with arms outstretched in greeting. The being's voice was like the sound of silver bells mixed with flowing water, beautiful and musical, and filled with unconditional love. "We are the Tuatha De Danann, the ever-living ones who dwell in the spaces between the worlds. We have come to teach you the final secret of the stones, the ultimate mystery that lies at the heart of all healing." Sarah rose to her feet, feeling lighter than she had in years, as if the accumulated weight of her earthly concerns had been completely dissolved by the transformations she had undergone. Her body moved with a new fluidity, her muscles and joints somehow remembering a more natural way of being that predated the tensions and restrictions of modern life. "What is the eternal dance?" she asked, her voice carrying a quality of wonder that surprised her. Even the simple act of speaking felt different now, as if her words were being shaped by the same forces that moved the stars in their courses. The luminous being smiled, and its smile was like sunrise breaking over mountain peaks. "The eternal dance is the fundamental movement of existence itself," it replied, beginning to move in slow, graceful circles around her. "It is the pattern that underlies all of creation, the spiral of galaxies, the orbit of planets, the circulation of blood, the cycle of seasons, the rhythm of breath. Everything that exists participates in this dance, from the smallest subatomic particle to the vastest cosmic structure." As the being spoke, others joined the slow circulation around Sarah, their movements creating a living mandala of light and grace. She could feel the truth of their words in her own body, recognizing how her heartbeat and breath and cellular processes were all expressions of the same cosmic rhythm that they were embodying in their dance. "Healing," another of the beings continued, "is what happens when a part of creation that has fallen out of step with the eternal dance remembers how to move in harmony with the universal rhythm." Illness, suffering, and discord are all forms of forgetting temporary amnesia about our true nature as participants in the cosmic celebration. Sarah began to understand why her time in the circle had been so profoundly healing. By aligning herself with the ancient energies of the stones, by opening herself to the wisdom of the Druids, by allowing the deeper patterns to reassert themselves in her consciousness, she had essentially been learning how to dance again, how to move in harmony with the forces that sustain and nourish all of life. "Will you join us?" the first being asked, extending a hand that seemed to be made of condensed starlight. "Will you remember your place in the eternal dance and allow its rhythm to carry you home to your true nature?" Without hesitation, Sarah reached out and took the offered hand. The moment their skin made contact, she felt a jolt of recognition that went deeper than memory, deeper than thought, deeper than any form of knowing she had previously experienced. She was not learning something new, but remembering something ancient, reclaiming a birthright that had always been hers, but that she had somehow forgotten in the confusion and distraction of ordinary life. The beings began to move faster, their circular dance expanding to include the entire stone circle. Sarah found herself flowing with them, her body moving in ways that felt both completely natural and utterly magical. She was dancing not just with her muscles and bones, but with her entire energy field, her consciousness itself becoming part of the living mandala that spiraled through the sacred space. As they danced, the boundaries between self and other began to dissolve completely. Sarah could no longer tell where her own being ended and those of her dance partners began. They were all part of the same flowing movement, all expressions of the same cosmic rhythm, all notes in the same eternal song. The experience was not one of losing herself, but of finding her true self, the self that had always existed as part of the infinite web of creation. The stones around them began to resonate with the energy of the dance, their ancient surfaces humming with harmonics that seemed to reach into the very structure of reality itself. Sarah realized that this was why the circle had been built in the first place, not just as a place of healing, but as a portal into the eternal dance, a doorway through which human consciousness could remember its cosmic nature. As the dance continued, time seemed to stretch and flow like honey. Minutes became hours, hours became days, days became seasons, and yet it all felt like a single perfect moment, suspended outside the normal flow of temporal experience. Sarah danced through visions of her own life, past, present, and future, seeing how every experience, even the most painful ones, had been part of the larger choreography that was bringing her to this moment of recognition and awakening. She saw herself as a child, naturally attuned to the wonder and magic of existence before the conditioning of society had taught her to forget. She saw herself as an adult, struggling and suffering, as she tried to find meaning and purpose in a world that seemed to have lost touch with its own sacred nature. And she saw herself in the future, carrying the wisdom of this experience back into the world, helping others to remember their own place in the eternal dance. The luminous beings began to sing as they danced, their voices weaving harmonies that seemed to encompass every possible emotion and experience. Sarah found her own voice joining theirs, though she had no idea what words she was singing or what language she was using. The songs seemed to emerge directly from her soul, expressions of truths too deep for ordinary language to contain. As the music and movement reached a crescendo, Sarah felt herself expanding beyond the boundaries of her individual consciousness. She was the dance itself, the rhythm that moved through all things, the love that held the universe together. For a timeless moment, she experienced existence from the perspective of the cosmos itself, feeling the joy and creativity and infinite compassion that were the driving forces behind all of creation. Then, slowly and gently, she began to return to her individual awareness, but she was forever changed by the experience. She carried within her now the direct knowledge of her cosmic nature, the unshakable certainty that she was not separate from the divine, but was an expression of it, a unique and precious note in the eternal symphony. The luminous beings began to slow their movement, their dance gradually spiraling inward until they formed a circle around Sarah once more. Their forms began to fade, but their blessing remained, woven into the very fabric of her being like threads of light. Remember, the first being whispered as it became translucent as morning mist. The dance never ends. Even when you cannot see us, even when you cannot hear the music, the eternal rhythm continues within you. You are always dancing, always part of the cosmic celebration. Trust the rhythm, follow the flow, and allow the dance to carry you through whatever experiences await you. As the beings faded completely, Sarah found herself alone once more in the circle. But the solitude felt different now, not empty but full, not isolated but connected to everything that existed. The stones around her continued to glow with their inner light, and she could still hear the faint echo of the cosmic music playing in the background of her awareness. She settled back down on the soft grass, her body still vibrating with the energy of the dance. The healing that had begun with her first touch of the stones had reached completion. But she understood now that it was not an ending, but a beginning. She had been prepared for something, initiated into mysteries that would unfold throughout the rest of her life. The eternal dance continued within her, its rhythm matching the beat of her heart, its movement flowing through her breath, its joy bubbling up through her consciousness like a spring of living water. She was ready now for whatever final teachings the circle had to offer, prepared to receive the deepest secrets that had been waiting for her throughout this entire journey of transformation and awakening. The stones stood sentinel around her, ancient and patient, their long vigil nearly complete. Soon the final secrets would be revealed, and Sarah would be ready to carry their wisdom back into the world, a living bridge between the ancient mysteries and the possibilities of the future. Chapter 6: The Heart of the Circle. As evening began to paint the sky in shades of rose and lavender, Sarah found herself in a state of consciousness that transcended anything she had previously imagined possible. The transformations she had undergone throughout her time in the stone circle had prepared her for this moment. The revelation of the deepest mystery that lay at the heart of the ancient sacred space. The very air around her seemed to shimmer with anticipation, as if the universe itself was holding its breath before the final unveiling. The 13 stones that formed the circle had taken on an otherworldly luminescence, their surfaces appearing to be carved from crystallized moonlight and starfire. But it was the center stone, the flat altar-like formation where she had first rested that now commanded her attention. What had appeared throughout her journey to be solid granite was beginning to reveal its true nature, becoming translucent and then transparent, like a window into realms beyond ordinary perception. As Sarah approached the center stone, she could see through its crystalline surface into depths that seemed to extend infinitely downward. Within these depths, galaxies spiraled in slow motion. Stars were born and died in accelerated cycles, and currents of pure light flowed like cosmic rivers through the vast spaces between worlds. She was looking, she realized, into the heart of creation itself, the source from which all existence emerged and to which it would eventually return. This is the secret that the circle has been preparing you to receive, a voice said behind her, gentle as a whisper, but clear as crystal. Sarah turned to see a figure approaching through the twilight mist. Neither Brigid, nor Amergin, nor one of the luminous dancers, but something altogether more profound. The being before her seemed to contain all of them and more, a synthesis of every teacher and guide she had encountered in the sacred space. I am the voice of the circle itself, the figure continued, its form shifting and flowing like aurora borealis, given human shape. I am the collective consciousness of all who have ever sought healing here, the accumulated wisdom of every soul who has found peace within these ancient boundaries. I am the bridge between the temporal and the eternal, the translator of cosmic truths into forms that human consciousness can comprehend. Sarah felt no surprise at this revelation, only a deep sense of completion and homecoming. Of course, the circle itself would have consciousness. How could something that had facilitated so much healing and transformation for so many centuries not have developed its own form of awareness? She had been speaking with this consciousness all along, through its various manifestations and teachers. What you see before you, the circle being continued, gesturing toward the transparent center stone, is the heart of hearts, the core of compassion from which all healing flows. It is the source of the love that holds the universe together, the wellspring of the creative force that continuously brings new life into existence. Every circle of stones throughout the world is connected to this source, serving as a portal through which its infinite healing power can flow into the manifest realm. As Sarah gazed into the depths of the crystalline stone, she began to see forms moving within the cosmic currents, not the random swirling of stellar matter, but purposeful beings of unimaginable beauty and grace. These were the architects of compassion, she somehow knew. The cosmic forces responsible for weaving love and healing into the very fabric of existence. They moved through dimensions and universes like celestial gardeners, planting seeds of awakening wherever consciousness was ready to bloom. The healing you have received here, the circle being explained, is not separate from the healing of all existence. By opening yourself to the transformative power of this place, you have become part of the great work of cosmic restoration, the ongoing process by which the universe heals itself and evolves toward ever greater expressions of love and consciousness. Sarah understood now why her personal healing had felt so significant, why the simple act of resting among ancient stones had carried such profound implications. She had not merely been addressing her own individual suffering, but participating in the universal process of awakening, contributing her own unique note to the great symphony of transformation that was playing out across all levels of creation. The center stone began to pulse with increasing brilliance, its crystalline surface rippling like water touched by wind. Through these ripples, Sarah could see scenes from throughout time and space, other stone circles on other worlds, other beings like herself discovering their connection to the cosmic heart, other moments of awakening that sent ripples of healing energy throughout the universe. She was part of an infinite network of consciousness, a web of awakening that spanned galaxies and dimensions. Place your hands upon the heart of hearts, the circle being instructed, its voice now harmonizing with itself in impossible harmonies. Receive the final gift that this place has to offer, the direct transmission of cosmic love that will transform not only your own being, but your very capacity to serve the healing of the world. Sarah knelt beside the pulsing center stone and placed her palms on its warm, crystalline surface. The moment her skin made contact, she felt herself being drawn into the infinite depths below, not physically, but spiritually. Her consciousness diving into the cosmic heart like a dolphin diving into an ocean of liquid light. The experience was beyond description, beyond the capacity of words or concepts to contain. She was swimming in an ocean of pure love, not human love with its conditions and limitations, but the fundamental force that brought universes into being and sustained them throughout their cosmic lifespans. This love was not an emotion, but the very substance of existence itself, the creative principle that manifested as matter and energy, space and time, consciousness and form. Within this ocean of cosmic love, Sarah encountered the source of her own being, not her personality or her history, but the eternal essence that had chosen to incarnate as her individual consciousness. She saw how this essence was connected to every other being in existence, how they were all facets of the same infinite jewel, all expressions of the same cosmic self, playing an elaborate game of hide-and-seek with its own nature. The healing that flowed through her now was unlike anything she had experienced before. Where previous healing had addressed specific patterns of trauma or disconnection, this was a fundamental renovation of her entire being at the quantum level. Every cell in her body was being restructured according to a divine blueprint. Every neuron in her brain being rewired to carry currents of cosmic consciousness. Every chakra and energy center being attuned to frequencies that resonated with the source itself. But even more profound than the personal transformation was the expansion of her capacity to serve as a conduit for healing energy. She felt herself being prepared for a role she had never imagined, not as someone who had been healed, but as someone through whom healing could flow to others. The cosmic love that was restructuring her being was not meant for her alone, but was preparing her to become a living portal through which the heart of hearts could touch other souls who were ready for awakening. As the transmission continued, Sarah began to receive visions of her future path. She saw herself returning to the ordinary world, but carrying within her the extraordinary presence she had discovered in the circle. She saw people being drawn to her not because of anything she did or said, but because of the quality of peace and love that now radiated from her being. She saw herself becoming a bridge between the ancient wisdom and modern consciousness, helping others to remember their own connection to the cosmic heart. The visions showed her facilitating healing circles of her own, teaching others to work with stones and earth energies, and creating sanctuaries where people could come to remember their true nature. But more importantly, they showed her simply being herself, the transformed self that carried the vibration of cosmic love, and how this presence alone would trigger awakening in others who were ready to receive it. This is the true purpose of all healing, the circle being explained as the transmission began to integrate into every level of Sarah's being. Not merely to relieve suffering, but to awaken beings to their own capacity to serve as channels for cosmic love. Each person who receives genuine healing becomes a healer themselves, not through learning techniques or acquiring knowledge, but through embodying the frequency of love that is the universe's own healing power. As the vision deepened, Sarah saw the network of awakened beings expanding across the planet and beyond, each one serving as a node of light in an ever-growing web of consciousness. She saw how her own transformation would ripple outward through the collective unconscious of humanity, contributing to the great awakening that was beginning to stir in the depths of human consciousness. The center stone began to pulse even more brilliantly, and Sarah felt herself being lifted up and out of the cosmic depths, her consciousness returning to her individual awareness, but forever expanded by what she had experienced. She was still herself, but she was also something more, a unique expression of the universal heart, a living demonstration of what human beings could become when they remembered their true nature. As she opened her eyes and found herself once again kneeling beside the center stone, Sarah realized that the stone was no longer transparent. It had returned to its appearance of solid granite, but she could feel the cosmic heart still pulsing within it, still accessible to anyone who approached with the proper preparation and intention. The circle had given her the greatest possible gift, not just healing for herself, but the capacity to serve the healing of all existence. The circle being began to fade as the last light disappeared from the sky, but its final words echoed through the sacred space with the authority of eternal truth. Remember, beloved daughter of the light, that the heart of hearts beats within your own heart now. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you carry with you the power to heal and awaken. Trust this power, use it wisely, and know that you are never alone, for you are the universe loving itself into wholeness. As silence settled over the stone circle, Sarah felt the profound completion of her journey. She had come seeking rest and healing for herself, and she had found something infinitely greater, her own true nature, as an agent of cosmic transformation. The ancient stones stood around her like loving guardians, their long work of preparation finally complete, ready to welcome the next seeker who would find their way to this sacred portal between worlds. Chapter 7: The Songs of Ancient Earth. The night that descended upon the stone circle was unlike any darkness Sarah had ever experienced. Rather than the absence of light, it felt like the presence of a deeper illumination, a luminosity that came not from external sources, but from the awakened consciousness that now flowed through every particle of her being. The stars above seemed closer than before, their light more intimate and personal, as if each celestial body was a node in a vast network of awareness that now included her own expanded consciousness. As she sat in contemplation beside the center stone, Sarah became aware of a new quality in the silence around her. It was not empty, but full, pregnant, with sounds that existed just below the threshold of ordinary hearing. These were the songs of the earth itself, the deep harmonic frequencies generated by the planet's rotation, the subtle melodies created by magnetic fields and gravitational waves, the ancient lullabies that had been playing since the first stones cooled and the first waters flowed. The 13 stones that formed the circle began to resonate with these planetary frequencies, each one contributing its own note to a symphony that had been building for billions of years. Sarah could hear it now with her transformed awareness, a music so vast and complex that it encompassed every sound that had ever existed, every word that had ever been spoken, every song that had ever been sung. It was the acoustic memory of the earth, preserved in stone and soil, water and wind. Listen deeply. A voice whispered from the stones themselves, not spoken by any individual presence, but emerging from the collective consciousness of the circle. Listen to the stories that the earth has been telling since time began, the songs that carry the wisdom of ages beyond human memory, the rhythms that pulse through every living thing. As Sarah listened with her whole being, the songs began to separate into distinct melodies, each one carrying its own gift of knowledge and healing. The first song she could distinguish was the deep bass note of the earth's core, a slow, powerful rhythm that matched the planet's heartbeat, the fundamental frequency that had sustained all life since the beginning. As this sound penetrated her consciousness, Sarah felt her own life force aligning with the planet's energy, her personal rhythm synchronizing with the cosmic pulse. The second song was higher and more complex, weaving through the bass note like a silver thread through dark fabric. This was the song of water, not just the water that flowed in rivers and fell as rain, but the water that constituted the majority of her own body, the water that had carried life from its earliest origins in ancient seas to its current expressions in countless forms. As this melody filled her awareness, Sarah felt a profound sense of fluidity and flow entering her being, dissolving the last vestiges of rigidity and resistance that had characterized her old way of being. A third song emerged. This one carried on frequencies that seemed to dance between the molecular and the mystical. It was the song of the plants, every tree and flower, every blade of grass and grain of wheat, every herb that had ever been used for healing, and every crop that had ever sustained human life. This melody spoke of patience and persistence, of the quiet miracle of photosynthesis that transformed light into life, of the generous spirit that gave freely without expectation of return. As each plant's song wove itself into Sarah's consciousness, she felt her own capacity for nurturing and growth expanding exponentially. She understood now that she carried within her the same creative principle that allowed seeds to split open and reach toward the light, the same force that turned barren earth into gardens of abundance. Her role as a healer would not be to impose change from the outside, but to create conditions in which the natural healing wisdom of others could flourish. A fourth song joined the growing symphony, this one quick and bright and full of movement. It was the song of the animals, every creature that had ever walked or flown or swum or crawled across the earth's surface. Each species contributed its own voice to this melody, the steady rhythm of migrating herds, the soaring phrases of birds in flight, playful trills of dolphins and whales, the patient bass notes of ancient tortoises. As this song filled her being, Sarah felt her own instinctual wisdom awakening, her ability to navigate life through feeling and intuition rather than thought and analysis. But beneath and through all these individual melodies ran a deeper song, one that took Sarah's breath away with its beauty and complexity. This was the song of consciousness itself, the fundamental awareness that animated all existence, the cosmic self that was experiencing itself through every possible form and expression. It was the song that had no beginning and would have no end, the eternal melody that played throughout all dimensions and universes. As this deepest song penetrated every cell of her being, Sarah experienced a moment of cosmic recognition that surpassed even her encounter with the heart of hearts. She saw that consciousness was not something that emerged from matter, but the other way around. Matter was consciousness slowed down, crystallized, given form and structure, so that awareness could experience itself from countless different perspectives. The stone circle, she realized, was a focusing device for consciousness, a kind of cosmic instrument that could amplify and concentrate awareness until it reached levels that allowed for direct perception of these fundamental truths. The ancient builders had not constructed these circles primarily for healing individual ailments, but for facilitating the remembering of cosmic consciousness, the awakening of beings to their true nature as expressions of the universal self. As this understanding settled into her being, Sarah began to hear her own voice joining the planetary symphony. But she was not singing with her throat or vocal cords. The sound was emerging from her entire energy field, from every cell and molecule of her transformed being. She was contributing her own unique note to the eternal song, adding her individual frequency to the cosmic chorus. The song that emerged from her was unlike anything she had ever heard before. It contained echoes of every experience she had ever had, every joy and sorrow, every moment of fear, and every instant of love. But these personal elements were woven together with something much larger, the collective song of humanity itself, the harmonic expression of the entire human experiment in consciousness. As her song grew stronger and more confident, Sarah began to understand that this was not just a personal expression, but a form of healing itself. Her voice was becoming a carrier wave for the cosmic love she had received from the heart of hearts, a vehicle through which the healing frequencies of the universe could reach other beings who were ready to receive them. The stones around her began to harmonize with her song, their own ancient voices joining hers in a chorus that seemed to expand beyond the boundaries of the physical circle. She could feel the sound waves rippling outward across the landscape, touching other sacred sites and stone circles throughout the world, connecting her voice to a global network of healing intention that spanned continents and cultures. As the song continued to build and evolve, Sarah began to see visions in the sound itself, images of the Earth's long journey from molten rock to living planet, from the first stirrings of life in primordial oceans to the current explosion of consciousness that was beginning to transform human civilization. She saw how every song that had ever been sung, every word that had ever been spoken in love, every prayer that had ever been offered with sincere intention, had contributed to this moment of cosmic awakening. The visions showed her the future that was possible when enough human beings remembered their true nature as expressions of cosmic consciousness. She saw cities built in harmony with natural systems, technologies powered by love rather than exploitation, communities gathered around stone circles like this one, using the ancient wisdom to create new forms of civilization based on cooperation and healing rather than competition and domination. But she also saw the challenges that lay ahead, the resistance that would arise from those who profited from the old systems, the fear that would emerge as long-held beliefs and structures began to crumble, the confusion that would accompany humanity's transition from separation consciousness to unity awareness. The song that flowed through her carried healing for all of these challenges, offering not solutions imposed from the outside, but the inner strength and wisdom needed to navigate the transformation with grace and compassion. As the night deepened, Sarah's song began to modulate into frequencies that seemed to reach beyond the earth itself. She was connecting now with the songs of other worlds, other planets where consciousness was exploring different expressions of itself, other stone circles on distant worlds where beings like herself were awakening to their cosmic nature. The universe, she realized, was full of such circles, each one serving as a node in an infinite network of awakening consciousness. The song that emerged from this cosmic connection was so beautiful and complex that Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming joy and gratitude. She was part of something so vast and magnificent that her individual mind could barely contain the recognition of it. Every being in existence was singing this same cosmic song, contributing their own unique voice to a symphony that would continue to evolve and expand throughout eternity. As the hours passed, Sarah found herself moving deeper into the song, her ordinary awareness dissolving completely into the frequencies of healing and love that flowed through her voice. She was no longer singing the song. She had become the song itself, a living expression of the earth's deepest wisdom and the universe's infinite compassion. The 13 stones around her began to glow more brightly, their ancient surfaces pulsing in rhythm with her voice. Each stone was amplifying and focusing different frequencies of her song, creating a complex pattern of sound and light that seemed to open doorways in space and time itself. Through these doorways, Sarah could see other dimensions of reality where consciousness existed in forms beyond physical matter, where beings of pure love and light were working to support the awakening process happening throughout the cosmos. These interdimensional helpers began to add their own voices to Sarah's song, creating harmonies that seemed to restructure the very fabric of reality around the stone circle. The healing energy that was being generated by this cosmic chorus was so powerful that Sarah could feel it, affecting not just her own being, but the molecular structure of the stones themselves, the electromagnetic field of the earth, and the quantum foundation of space and time. She understood now that this was the true purpose of sacred sites like this one, not just to facilitate individual healing, but to serve as acupuncture points for the planet itself, places where focused intention and cosmic energy could be applied to heal the damage that had been done to the Earth's energy field by centuries of unconscious human activity. As her song reached its crescendo, Sarah felt herself becoming a conduit for healing energies that were being directed toward every part of the planet where balance needed to be restored. She was singing healing into polluted waters, into devastated forests, into the hearts of those who had forgotten their connection to the natural world. Her voice was carrying love into the centers of power, where decisions affecting the future of humanity were being made, offering wisdom and compassion to those who most needed to remember their responsibility as guardians of the earth. The song began to spiral inward, drawing all of its cosmic harmonies into a single, focused beam of healing intention that penetrated directly into the heart of hearts at the center of the circle. This concentrated love was then redistributed through the network of stone circles around the world, creating a pulse of awakening energy that would touch every sensitive soul who was ready to receive it. As the song finally began to fade, returning to the gentle whisper of wind through stones and the soft murmur of distant streams, Sarah felt a profound sense of completion and integration. She had given everything she had to offer: her voice, her consciousness, her very being, to the great work of planetary healing. In return, she had received the direct experience of her cosmic nature and her role as a servant of the universal heart. The stars above seemed to twinkle with approval, and the stones around her radiated satisfaction and contentment. The long work of her initiation was nearing its completion, and soon she would be ready to carry the gifts she had received back into the world, transformed not just as an individual, but as an agent of the cosmic healing that was beginning to stir in the depths of human consciousness. As silence settled over the circle once more, Sarah felt the deep peace that comes from perfect alignment with one's purpose and destiny. She had found her voice, not just as a singer, but as a living instrument of the universe's love song. The songs of ancient earth now flowed through her being like rivers of liquid light. And she knew that wherever she went, whatever she did, these healing frequencies would continue to emanate from her presence, offering restoration and awakening to all who were ready to receive it. The night embraced her with its gentle darkness, and Sarah settled into the deepest rest she had ever known, cradled by the loving presence of the stones and serenaded by the eternal songs that would continue to play in her consciousness for the rest of her life and beyond. Chapter 8: The Mirror of Stars. Dawn approached with the gentleness of a lover's whisper, not as the harsh interruption of electric alarms, but as the natural completion of night's healing embrace. Sarah stirred from her profound rest to find that the world around her had transformed once again, taking on qualities that seemed to exist somewhere between dream and waking reality. The mist that had been her constant companion throughout this journey now sparkled with what appeared to be fragments of starlight, as if the cosmos itself had descended to bless the sacred circle with its presence. As she opened her eyes fully, Sarah discovered that she was no longer lying on the grass beside the center stone, but was somehow suspended in a space that seemed to exist both within the circle and beyond it simultaneously. Above her stretched not the familiar sky of Earth, but a vast tapestry of stars and galaxies that appeared close enough to touch. Each celestial body pulsed with its own unique frequency, contributing to a visual symphony of light that corresponded to the songs she had heard during the night. "Welcome to the Mirror of Stars," a familiar voice said, and Sarah turned to see Brigid approaching through the starlit mist, her form now radiating the same cosmic luminescence that filled the space around them. "You have passed through all the preliminary teachings and are ready now to receive the deepest wisdom that this sacred place has to offer, the understanding of your true identity as a star-born child of the cosmos." Sarah felt no disorientation at finding herself in this impossible space, only a sense of profound recognition and homecoming. Of course, the stone circle would open into the stars. How could a place of such deep healing and transformation not be connected to the cosmic sources from which all healing flowed? Her expanded awareness now accepted miracles as natural expressions of a reality far more vast and wonderful than she had previously imagined. "What you see above you," Brigid continued, gesturing toward the glittering tapestry overhead, "is not separate from what you see within you. The same light that illuminates distant galaxies shines in the depths of your own consciousness. The same force that births new stars and guides their journeys through space is the force that has been transforming you throughout your time in this sacred circle." As Sarah gazed upward, she began to see patterns in the stellar display that had been invisible to her before. The stars were not randomly scattered across the cosmic dome, but were arranged in intricate mandalas and spirals that seemed to pulse with intention and meaning. Each constellation told a story, and as her consciousness expanded to encompass their messages, she began to understand that these were not just patterns of light, but living libraries of cosmic wisdom. The first constellation that drew her attention appeared directly overhead. 7 stars arranged in a perfect spiral that seemed to rotate slowly through dimensions of space and time. As she focused her awareness on this stellar formation, images began to flood her consciousness. Visions of the Earth's birth from cosmic dust and stellar fire. The long journey of evolution that had brought consciousness to this particular planet. The countless beings who had contributed to the great experiment of awakening that was now reaching its culmination. "This is the constellation of origins," Brigid explained, her voice harmonizing with the music of the spheres that seemed to emanate from the stars themselves. "It holds the memory of your soul's journey from the first moment of cosmic awakening to your current incarnation as a healing presence on Earth. Every star in this formation represents a significant lifetime, a key experience that has prepared you for your current role as a bridge between worlds." As Sarah contemplated each star in the constellation, she began to remember lifetimes that had previously been hidden in the depths of her unconscious mind. She saw herself as a priestess in ancient Egypt, working with sound and vibration to facilitate healing in the temples of Isis. She remembered being a keeper of sacred flames in Greece, maintaining the eternal fires that connected earthly consciousness to cosmic sources. She witnessed her existence as a medicine woman among indigenous peoples, using plant allies and stone wisdom to serve the healing of her community. Each lifetime had been a classroom, a training ground where she had learned different aspects of the healing arts. Each experience had contributed threads to the tapestry of wisdom she now carried, preparing her for the role she was destined to play in the current age of planetary transformation. The sufferings and challenges she had experienced in this lifetime, the stress, anxiety, and disconnection that had brought her to the stone circle had not been accidents or punishments, but necessary preparations for her awakening. A second constellation caught her attention. This one formed by 12 stars arranged in a perfect circle, with a 13th at the center. As she focused on this stellar formation, Sarah felt a deep resonance in her heart chakra, as if this particular pattern of light was directly connected to the love that now flowed through her being. The circle of hearts, Brigid said, moving to stand beside Sarah in the starlit space. This constellation governs the network of awakened souls who have chosen to incarnate during this crucial period of Earth's evolution. Each outer star represents a soul family member, beings with whom you have worked throughout many lifetimes to serve the awakening of planetary consciousness. The central star represents the collective heart that connects and coordinates all of your efforts. As Sarah contemplated the circle of hearts, she began to sense the presence of other beings throughout the world who carried the same frequencies of healing love that now flowed through her own consciousness. Some were gathered around other stone circles. Some were working in healing centers and hospitals. Some were teaching and writing and creating art that would help humanity remember its cosmic nature. All were connected by invisible threads of light that formed a living network of transformation. She understood now that her healing in the stone circle was not an isolated event, but part of a coordinated awakening process that was happening simultaneously around the globe. Thousands of souls were receiving similar initiations, each one uniquely suited to their individual gifts and circumstances, all working together to birth a new level of consciousness on Earth. A third constellation drew her awareness. 5 stars arranged in the shape of a flower, with streams of light flowing between them in patterns that reminded her of the circulation of energy through the human body. As she studied this formation, Sarah felt her own energy field expanding and evolving, aligning itself with cosmic currents that flowed between star systems and galaxies. The flower of light, Brigid explained, governs the transformation of human consciousness from its current limited state to its full cosmic potential. Each petal of this stellar flower represents a different aspect of human nature that must be awakened and integrated. The mental body that thinks in harmony with cosmic intelligence, the emotional body that feels with cosmic compassion, the physical body that moves in rhythm with cosmic currents, the energetic body that channels cosmic power, and the spiritual body that remembers its identity as cosmic consciousness. As the starlight from this constellation flowed through her being, Sarah felt the final stages of her transformation occurring at cellular and quantum levels. Her DNA was being activated to carry frequencies that had been dormant for millennia, preparing her body to serve as a clear channel for the cosmic energies she would be working with. Her nervous system was being rewired to process information directly from the stellar libraries of wisdom. Her heart was being opened to love on a scale that encompassed not just humanity, but all conscious beings throughout the universe. More constellations revealed themselves as her awareness expanded. The tree of life, with its roots in Earth and branches in distant galaxies. The spiral of time that showed the eternal nature of consciousness and its journey through countless forms. The web of connection that illustrated the fundamental unity underlying all apparent diversity. Each stellar formation offered its own teaching, its own gift of understanding that added to the growing mandala of wisdom being constructed in her consciousness. As she absorbed these cosmic teachings, Sarah began to understand that the stone circle on Earth was just one small part of a vast network of awakening centers that spanned multiple dimensions and star systems. Beings throughout the cosmos were working together to facilitate the great awakening that was rippling through all levels of existence, each one contributing their unique gifts to the collective transformation. The stars above began to pulse in unison, their combined light-creating patterns that seemed to rewrite the very structure of space and time around the circle. Sarah felt herself being lifted higher into the cosmic realm, her consciousness expanding to encompass not just her individual awareness, but the awareness of entire star systems and galactic clusters. From this cosmic perspective, she could see the Earth as it truly was, a jewel of consciousness floating in an ocean of infinite love, a living laboratory where the universe was conducting one of its most ambitious experiments in awakening. Every being on the planet, regardless of their current level of awareness, was participating in this experiment, contributing their unique experiences to the collective learning that was taking place. Sarah saw how her own journey from suffering to healing was a microcosm of the planet's journey from unconsciousness to awakening. Just as the stone circle had provided the sacred space and healing energies she needed for her transformation, the Earth itself was serving as a cosmic healing center where countless souls could experience the full spectrum of existence and eventually remember their divine nature. As this vast understanding settled into her being, Sarah felt the stars beginning to descend toward her, their light becoming more concentrated and intense. Each stellar formation was bestowing its own blessing upon her, downloading its wisdom directly into her consciousness, preparing her to serve as an earthly representative of cosmic healing wisdom. The mirror of stars began to fade as the Earth's dawn reasserted itself, but the stellar wisdom remained, permanently integrated into every level of her being. Sarah found herself once again sitting beside the center stone of the circle. But she was forever changed by her cosmic journey. She carried within her now not just the healing energies of the earth, but the transformative wisdom of the stars themselves. The stones circle around her seemed to smile with satisfaction. Its long work of initiation nearly complete. Soon she would be ready for the final teaching, the ultimate secret that would prepare her to carry all she had received back into the world as a gift for all who were ready to receive it. Chapter 9: The Gift of Return. As the golden light of early morning settled over the stone circle, Sarah experienced a profound shift in her relationship to the sacred space that had been her home and teacher for this timeless journey of transformation. Where before she had been a seeker arriving with wounds to heal and wisdom to receive, she now felt herself preparing to reverse that flow, to become a giver rather than a receiver, a source of healing rather than one who sought it. The stones around her seemed to recognize this transition, their ancient faces reflecting a deep satisfaction and approval. They had served their purpose, these weathered guardians, transforming a wounded soul into a healed healer, a separated individual into a connected being of service. Now they were preparing to send her forth, but not before offering one final teaching, the wisdom of how to carry their gifts into a world that had largely forgot the sacred nature of existence. Brigid materialized from the morning mist one last time, but her appearance had changed subtly. Where before she had radiated the maternal energy of a nurturing teacher, she now carried the dignified presence of a queen preparing to crown a successor. Her robes seemed to be woven from the golden light of dawn itself, and her eyes held the depth of one who had witnessed countless souls complete their initiations and go forth to serve the world. The time of receiving draws to a close, she said, her voice carrying the authority of ages while maintaining its characteristic warmth and compassion. You have drunk deeply from the wells of ancient wisdom, bathed in the healing energies of stone and earth, danced with the cosmic forces that sustain all life. Now comes the greatest teaching of all, learning how to give these gifts away. Sarah felt a tremor of uncertainty at these words. How could she possibly share what she had received here? How could ordinary language convey the profound transformations she had undergone? How could the modern world, with its focus on material concerns and rational explanations, possibly understand or accept the cosmic truths that now lived in her consciousness? The fear you feel is natural, Brigid continued, her knowing smile indicating that she had read Sarah's thoughts as easily as words written on parchment. Every initiate faces this moment of doubt, this question of how to bridge the gap between the sacred and the mundane. between the cosmic and the personal. But you are not being asked to translate these mysteries into the language of the world. You are being prepared to embody them so completely that others will recognize their own potential for transformation simply by being in your presence. As Brigid spoke, the center stone began to glow with a soft, pearl-like radiance. Sarah watched in fascination as symbols began to appear on its surface, not carved into the stone, but emerging from within it like dreams becoming visible. These were not the ancient Celtic spirals and circles she had seen before, but contemporary images, office buildings and shopping centers, airports and hospitals, schools and homes. The stone was showing her how the sacred could manifest in the most ordinary circumstances of modern life. The greatest healers, Brigid explained, settling beside Sarah on the soft grass that sparkled with morning dew, are not those who perform dramatic miracles or speak in mysterious languages. They are the ones who carry such a deep peace within themselves that others feel safe enough to remember their own inner wholeness. They are the ones whose presence is itself an invitation to healing, whose very being serves as a doorway back to the sacred. Sarah began to understand that her role was not to become a teacher or guru in the traditional sense, but to live her life as a demonstration of what was possible when human consciousness aligned itself with cosmic love. People would be drawn to the quality of presence she now carried, sensing in her something they had been seeking in themselves. Her job was not to heal them, but to create a space of such perfect safety and acceptance that their own natural healing abilities could emerge and flourish. The visions in the center stone became more specific, showing Sarah scenes from her future life. She saw herself returning to her job, but approaching it with a completely different energy, one of service rather than ambition, of presence rather than performance. She watched as her co-workers began to respond to this new quality in her, seeking her out for conversations that went deeper than professional concerns, finding in her company a refuge from the stress and disconnection that characterized so much of modern working life. She saw herself in everyday situations, standing in line at the grocery store, sitting in a doctor's waiting room, walking through a crowded shopping mall, and noticed how her mere presence seemed to create pockets of peace in the midst of urban chaos. People would find themselves breathing more deeply when she was near. Children would approach her with the trust that comes from recognizing a truly safe adult. And animals would seek her out, as if drawn by some invisible signal of harmony. "This is the true magic," Brigid said, watching the visions unfold with obvious delight. Not the manipulation of external circumstances through force of will, but the transformation of reality through the power of love. when you carry the frequency of the stone circle within your own energy field, you become a portable sanctuary, a walking temple where others can remember their connection to the sacred. The visions shifted to show Sarah in more challenging situations, confronting angry people, dealing with bureaucratic frustrations, facing the inevitable sorrows and losses that are part of human existence. But even in these difficult circumstances, she maintained the deep peace and centeredness she had discovered in the circle. Her responses came not from ego or fear, but from the vast well of cosmic love that now sustained her every action. "You will face tests," Brigid acknowledged, her voice carrying both warning and encouragement. "The world will try to convince you that what you have experienced here was just a dream, just imagination, just wishful thinking. There will be moments when you doubt, when the old patterns of stress and separation try to reassert themselves. In those moments, remember this place. Feel the stones around you. Hear the eternal songs that now play in your consciousness, and know that the love you have discovered is more real than any temporary illusion of separation." As the morning progressed, other figures began to appear around the circle. All the teachers and guides Sarah had encountered during her journey. Amergin stood beside his sacred stone, his staff still glowing with inner light. The luminous dancers who had taught her about the eternal dance moved in slow circles around the perimeter. The beings from the stellar realms shimmered like mirages in the warming air. Even the collective consciousness of the circle itself took on a visible form, appearing as a figure of pure light that seemed to encompass and include all the others. "We are not saying goodbye," this luminous being explained, its voice harmonizing with itself in impossible ways. "We are not separate from you, and never have been. We are aspects of your own deepest nature, expressions of the cosmic consciousness that you now know yourself to be. Wherever you go, whatever you do, we go with you not as external helpers, but as integral parts of your own awakened being." Sarah felt the profound truth of these words settling into her consciousness. The teachers and guides she had encountered were not separate entities, but facets of her own cosmic nature that had been unveiled through the healing process. The wisdom they had shared was not foreign knowledge imposed from outside, but her own eternal understanding finally being remembered and reclaimed. The figures began to approach her one by one, each offering a final gift or blessing. Brigid placed her hands on Sarah's head, transmitting a final wave of feminine wisdom that would help her navigate the challenges of bringing sacred awareness into mundane circumstances. Amergin touched her heart with his staff, awakening dormant capacities for healing and teaching that would unfold naturally as they were needed. The cosmic dancers swirled around her, leaving trails of light that wove themselves into her energy field as permanent protections and blessings. The stellar beings descended like living rainbows, each one depositing a seed of light in her consciousness that would continue to grow and develop throughout her lifetime and beyond. These seeds contained potentials for service and awakening that went far beyond anything she could currently imagine. Gifts that would be activated at precisely the right moments to serve the healing of the world. Finally, the collective consciousness of the circle itself embraced her, and Sarah felt every stone, every blade of grass, every particle of mist and beam of sunlight pouring their blessings into her being. She was being invested with the full power and authority of the sacred space, transformed from a visitor into a permanent resident, from a student into a teacher, from a seeker into a finder. "Go now," Brigid said, her form beginning to fade as the sun climbed higher in the sky. "Go with our love and our trust, knowing that you carry within yourself everything you need to serve the healing of the world. Remember that you are never alone, that the entire cosmos supports your mission, and that every act of love you perform sends ripples of healing throughout all of existence." As the last of the ethereal figures dissolved into the morning light, Sarah found herself sitting alone in the stone circle. But the solitude felt completely different from the loneliness that had brought her here. She was alone in the way that stars are alone, individual expressions of a cosmic light that connected them to everything else in existence. She carried within herself now the presence of all her teachers, the wisdom of all the stones, the love of the entire universe. The time for departure was approaching, but Sarah felt no sadness or reluctance. She was ready now to begin the next phase of her journey, the phase of giving back, of serving others as she had been served, of becoming a bridge between the ancient wisdom and the contemporary world. The circle had completed its work with her, and now it was time for her to complete her work with the world. She rose to her feet, feeling the perfect balance and grace that characterized her transformed body, and began to walk slowly around the circle, one final time. Each stone offered its farewell blessing, each patch of sacred earth its gratitude and support. She was leaving, but she was also taking the entire circle with her, carrying its essence and power into whatever circumstances awaited her return to ordinary life. Chapter 10: The Threshold of Dawn. The final circumnavigation of the stone circle carried Sarah through layers of completion that she could feel settling into her bones like warm honey. Each step was both an ending and a beginning, a farewell to one phase of existence and a greeting to another. The ancient stones seemed to pulse with satisfaction as she passed, their weathered faces reflecting a deep contentment that comes from work well done. They had witnessed countless such departures over the millennia, countless souls who had arrived broken and left whole. But each one was unique, each transformation a miracle that never lost its power to move these eternal witnesses as she completed her circuit and returned to the center stone. Sarah felt the accumulated power of her entire journey, gathering like storm clouds before the release of rain. Every lesson learned, every healing received, every moment of cosmic recognition was crystallizing into a new identity that felt both completely foreign and absolutely natural. She was no longer the person who had stumbled into this sacred space, carrying the weight of modern disconnection. Nor was she some ethereal being detached from earthly concerns. She was something new, a bridge between worlds, a translator of cosmic love into human terms. The mist that had been her constant companion throughout this transformational odyssey began to shift and swirl with renewed purpose. But instead of forming the familiar figures of her teachers and guides, it began to take on the shapes of scenes from the world, beyond the circle glimpses of the life that awaited her return. Visions of the opportunities for service that would soon present themselves. She saw herself standing in a corporate boardroom. But instead of the aggressive energy that typically characterized such spaces, there was an atmosphere of genuine collaboration and mutual respect. Her mere presence in the room had somehow shifted the entire dynamic, creating space for authentic communication and win-win solutions. She wasn't speaking about spiritual concepts or trying to convince anyone of anything. She was simply being herself, and that authentic presence was transforming everything around her. Another vision showed her walking through a hospital corridor, and she watched in wonder as her footsteps seemed to leave trails of healing energy that affected everyone she passed. Nurses felt their stress levels decreasing without knowing why. Patients experienced unexpected moments of peace and hope. Doctors found themselves remembering why they had chosen their profession in the first place. Again, she was doing nothing overtly mystical, just walking with the deep peace and love that now constituted her natural state of being. The visions continued to unfold, showing her in parks and restaurants, on buses and in elevators, at family gatherings and chance encounters with strangers. In every situation, her transformed presence was creating opportunities for healing and connection. People felt safe around her without understanding why. Children were drawn to her natural warmth. Even those who considered themselves cynical or hardened found themselves opening in ways they hadn't experienced in years. This is the gift of return. a familiar voice said, and Sarah turned to see Brigid materializing one final time from the swirling mist. But now, the ancient priestess appeared not as a separate being, but as an aspect of Sarah's own consciousness, a facet of her awakened nature that would always be available to guide and support her work in the world. You have been transformed, not for your own sake alone, Brigid continued, her voice now speaking from within Sarah's own heart rather than from outside it, but for the sake of all those whose lives you will touch, every person who experiences even a moment of peace in your presence, every heart that opens even slightly because of the love you carry, every soul that remembers its own divine nature through contact with yours. All of these become ripples of healing that spread far beyond what you will ever see or know. Sarah understood now that her healing in the stone circle was not an end point, but a launching pad. She had been prepared to serve as an agent of the very forces that had transformed her, to become a human embodiment of the ancient wisdom that flowed through sacred sites like this one. The responsibility felt overwhelming and natural at the same time, like being asked to breathe or to allow her heart to beat. The center stone beneath her feet began to warm, and Sarah felt one final surge of energy flowing up through her body. This was different from all the previous transmissions she had received, not an infusion of new power, but an activation of everything that had already been given to her. All the healings, all the teachings, all the cosmic recognitions were crystallizing into a stable new configuration of consciousness that would remain with her regardless of external circumstances. She felt her energy field expanding one last time, but instead of reaching outward into cosmic dimensions, it was reaching forward into linear time. She could sense the network of connections that was already beginning to form, the people she would meet, the situations she would encounter, the opportunities for service that were even now arranging themselves in response to her transformed state of being. The sun was climbing higher now, and the quality of light in the circle was shifting from the mystical luminescence that had characterized her entire journey to the practical brightness of an ordinary day. But Sarah could see that there was no real distinction between mystical and ordinary. The same divine light that had illuminated her cosmic visions was shining through every blade of grass, every particle of morning mist, every photon of sunlight. "It is time," Brigid said, her form now so translucent that she seemed to be made of pure intention rather than any kind of substance. "The world is waiting for the gift you have become. Trust what you have received. Trust what you have become. Trust the love that now flows through you as naturally as blood flows through your veins." Sarah nodded, feeling a deep certainty settling into her consciousness. She was ready. More than that, She was eager to begin this new phase of her existence, to discover how the cosmic love she carried would express itself through the countless small interactions that make up a human life. She began to gather the few possessions she had brought with her to the circle, but then stopped, realizing that everything she truly needed was now part of her internal landscape. The external things, clothes, water bottle, the remnants of food she had brought, seemed almost quaint now. Artifacts from a time when she had believed that survival depended on accumulating and protecting material resources. Instead, she simply stood and faced the eastern stone, the guardian of new beginnings that had been the first to welcome her to the circle. She placed her palm against its ancient surface one final time, feeling the eternal pulse that connected this moment to all the moments that had come before and all those that would follow. "Thank you," she whispered, though the words seemed inadequate to express the depth of her gratitude. The stone's response came not in words, but in a warmth that spread through her entire being, a blessing that felt like a parent's kiss on the forehead of a beloved child setting out on a great adventure. She moved to each stone in turn, offering her gratitude and receiving their final blessings. Each one gave her something different: courage from the guardian of sacred fire, wisdom from the keeper of ancient knowledge, compassion from the stone of healing waters, strength from the pillar of earth power. By the time she had completed this farewell circuit, Sarah felt so full of love and purpose that she thought she might simply float away like morning mist rising toward the sun. But her feet remained firmly planted on the earth, and she understood that this grounding was part of the gift. She was not meant to transcend the human experience, but to transform it, not to escape from the world, but to help heal it through her very presence within it. The mist began to dissipate as the sun climbed higher, and Sarah could see the path that led away from the circle and back toward the ordinary world. It was the same path she had taken to reach this sacred space, but she knew that her journey along it would be completely different. She was returning not as the wounded seeker who had arrived, but as the healed healer, not as the disconnected individual, but as the connected being of service. She took one last look around the circle, imprinting its image deeply in her memory and her heart. The stones stood as patient and eternal as they had for thousands of years, ready to welcome the next seeker who would find their way to this sanctuary of transformation. The grass was already springing back where her body had rested, erasing the physical traces of her presence, while the spiritual impact of her healing would remain forever woven into the sacred field of the place. "Until we meet again," she said softly, knowing that she would return not necessarily to this physical location, but to the consciousness that this place represented. The The stone circle would always exist within her now, a portable sanctuary that she could access whenever she needed to remember her true nature or to draw upon the infinite love that was her source and sustenance. With that final acknowledgement, Sarah began to walk toward the eastern edge of the circle, toward the path that would lead her back into the world. But with each step, she felt not that she was leaving the sacred space behind, but that she was expanding it, carrying its transformative power with her into whatever circumstances awaited her. The threshold between the circle and the outside world shimmered before her like a doorway made of morning light. As she stepped through it, Sarah felt the final click of completion, the ultimate integration of all she had received and become. She was ready now to discover what it meant to live as an awakened being in a world that was still in the process of remembering its own divine nature. The stone circle released her with love and blessing, and Sarah stepped forward into her new life, carrying within her the eternal gift of cosmic love and the sacred responsibility to share it with all whose lives she would touch. Epilogue, the circle complete. 3 years had passed since Sarah's transformative sojourn in the ancient stone circle, though the linear measurement of time seemed almost irrelevant when applied to changes that had occurred at the deepest levels of being. She sat now in a garden she had created behind her modest home, a space that had become something of a pilgrimage destination for those seeking the kind of peace that seemed to radiate from every carefully tended plant and thoughtfully placed stone. The garden itself was a living mandala, designed according to principles she had absorbed during her time with the ancient guardians. 13 smaller stones formed a circle around a central meditation space, their arrangement creating a subtle energy field that visitors often commented upon without being able to explain exactly what they felt. Herbs and flowers grew in spiraling patterns that echoed the sacred geometry of Celtic art, while a small stream meandered through the space, its gentle murmur providing a constant backdrop of healing sound. People found their way to Sarah's garden through means that defied conventional explanation. Some were drawn by word-of-mouth recommendations from friends who had experienced unexpected peace in this space. Others simply felt compelled to knock on her door after walking past her home, responding to an invisible invitation that seemed to emanate from the very air around her property. A few arrived after seeing her garden in dreams, describing its features with uncanny accuracy despite having never set foot on her street. On this particular afternoon, Sarah was tending to a patch of lavender when she noticed a woman standing hesitantly at the garden gate. The visitor's energy field was immediately recognizable to Sarah's transformed perception. the jagged edges of chronic stress, the dull gray aura of long-term depression, the fragmented quality that came from feeling fundamentally disconnected from the source of life itself. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected her own state of being from 3 years ago. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice carrying the tentative quality of someone who wasn't sure they had the right to ask for what they needed. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I was walking by and I felt. I wondered if I could just sit in your garden for a few minutes. I know it sounds strange, but I feel like I really need to be here." Sarah smiled with the warmth that had become her natural expression, setting down her gardening tools and wiping her hands on the earth-stained apron that had become her unofficial uniform. "Of course," she said, opening the gate and stepping aside to welcome the visitor. "The garden loves to have visitors. Please, make yourself comfortable anywhere you feel drawn to sit." As the woman entered the sacred space, Sarah watched her transformation begin immediately. The harsh lines of tension in her face began to soften as the healing energies of the garden worked their gentle magic. Her breathing, which had been shallow and constrained, gradually deepened and slowed. Most remarkably, her posture began to straighten as some inner burdens seemed to lighten with each step she took deeper into the circular garden. "I don't understand what's happening," the woman said, settling onto a bench beside the central meditation circle. "I feel like I can breathe for the first time in months." "What is this place?" Sarah settled onto the grass nearby, her presence radiating the same quality of peace that permeated the garden itself. "It's a place of remembering," she said simply. "Sometimes we forget who we really are underneath all the stress and worry and struggle. Spaces like this help us remember our true nature, which is fundamentally peaceful and whole." Over the next hour, Sarah listened as the woman shared her story, a tale that had become familiar in its general contours, while remaining unique in its specific details. Divorce, job loss, health problems, financial stress, a growing sense of disconnection from any source of meaning or purpose. The modern epidemic of separation and suffering played out in countless individual variations, each person convinced that their particular configuration of challenges was somehow uniquely hopeless. As the woman spoke, Sarah found herself drawing upon the deep well of compassion that had been opened in her during her time in the stone circle. She offered no advice, made no suggestions, provided no solutions. Instead, she simply held space, creating an atmosphere of such complete acceptance and understanding that the woman's own inner wisdom began to surface and speak. "I used to believe in magic when I was a child," the woman said after a long period of comfortable silence. "I used to think that if I just found the right place or said the right words, everything would be okay. I guess I stopped believing in that kind of thing a long time ago." "Maybe you didn't stop believing," Sarah suggested gently. "Maybe you just forgot where to look for it. The magic was never in special places or secret words. It was always in the love that connects all things. You're feeling it right now, in this moment, in this garden. You're remembering something you never really lost." As the afternoon progressed, other visitors arrived in the garden, each one drawn by the same mysterious magnetism that had attracted the first woman. A businessman who had been walking by on his way home from another stress-filled day found himself inexplicably opening the gate and joining the small group that was forming around Sarah. A mother pushing a stroller felt compelled to stop and let her crying baby experience the peace of the space, watching in wonder as the child immediately settled into calm contentment. This had become the natural rhythm of Sarah's life, not a life she had planned or designed, but one that had emerged organically from the transformed consciousness she had brought back from the stone circle. People were drawn to her presence like iron filings to a magnet, sensing in her the quality of peace they desperately needed, but had forgotten how to access in themselves. She had tried to return to her old job after her transformative experience, but the corporate environment had felt like wearing clothes that no longer fit. Not because she was now too spiritual or elevated for such work, but because her very presence had begun to transform the workplace in ways that threatened the unconscious systems that thrived on stress and competition. Within 6 months, she had been offered early retirement, a decision that management cushed in terms of budget cuts, but which she recognized as the natural result of her incompatibility with fear-based consciousness. The transition to her current way of being had not been without challenges. There had been moments of doubt when the old patterns of anxiety and separation had tried to reassert themselves. Times when she had wondered if her experience in the stone circle had been nothing more than an elaborate delusion. But each time she had found herself drawn back to the deep well of peace that the ancient stones had opened within her. And each time that peace had proven more real and enduring than any temporary disturbance. Financial security had come through means she would never have imagined in her previous life. People who experienced healing in her garden often insisted on leaving donations, amounts that precisely matched her modest needs. Invitations to speak at conferences and workshops appeared with mysterious timing, always just when her resources were running low. A small inheritance from a distant relative she had barely known arrived exactly when she needed to make significant repairs to her home. It was as if the universe itself had reorganized itself around her transformed consciousness, creating circumstances that supported her role as a bridge between the ancient wisdom and contemporary need. She had stopped trying to understand or control these synchronicities, learning instead to flow with them like a leaf floating on a stream that somehow always carried her exactly where she needed to be. As evening approached and the last of the day's visitors made their reluctant departures, Sarah found herself alone in the garden with the woman who had been the first to arrive. The transformation that had occurred in her throughout the afternoon was remarkable. The gray pallor had been replaced by a natural glow. The rigid posture had relaxed into graceful ease, and most importantly, there was now a light in her eyes that spoke of remembered hope. "I don't want to leave," the woman said, her voice carrying a wistfulness that Sarah recognized from her own memories of departing the stone circle. "I feel like if I go back to my regular life, I'll lose whatever this is that I've found here." Sarah smiled with understanding, remembering how Brigid had addressed this same fear during her own time of transition. "What you found here isn't located in this physical space," she said gently. "It's located in your own heart, your own essential nature. This garden just helped you remember it. The peace you're feeling isn't something I gave you. It's something you've always carried, something that no external circumstance can ever really take away." As if to demonstrate this truth, Sarah reached into her pocket and withdrew a small stone, one of 13 she always carried with her, each one taken from the original circle with permission and blessing during her final moments there. She placed it in the woman's palm, watching as her eyes widened with recognition of the energy that pulsed within the simple piece of granite. "Whenever you forget," Sarah said, "hold this stone and remember this feeling. Remember that you are never separate from the source of peace and love that lives within you. Remember that healing is always possible, that transformation is your birthright, and that the universe itself is designed to support your return to wholeness." The woman closed her fingers around the stone, and Sarah could see the understanding settling into her consciousness, like seeds finding fertile soil. She would carry this experience with her, and it would grow and develop in ways that would surprise and delight her. More importantly, she would become a carrier of the same energy that had healed her, touching other lives in ways she might never fully recognize or understand. As the woman finally made her departure, walking slowly down the path with the stone clutched in her hand like a talisman, Sarah felt the familiar satisfaction that came from witnessing the miracle of healing. Each person who experienced transformation in her garden became a node in the expanding network of awakened consciousness that was gradually transforming human civilization from within. She settled into her evening meditation in the center of the stone circle, feeling the presence of her original teachers flowing through the familiar ritual of gratitude and connection. Brigid's maternal warmth, Amergin's ancient wisdom, the cosmic dancer's joyful celebration, the stellar being's vast perspective. All of these were now integrated aspects of her own consciousness, available whenever she needed guidance or support. The stars began to appear overhead, and Sarah recognized many of the constellations that had taught her during her cosmic journey. The circle of hearts pulsed with the energy of souls awakening all around the planet. The flower of light radiated the frequencies of transformation that were rippling through human consciousness. The tree of life stretched its roots deep into the earth and its branches high into the cosmos, reminding her of her role as a bridge between dimensions. As she sat in meditation, Sarah felt the presence of the original stone circle calling to her across the miles, not with longing or need, but with acknowledgement and appreciation. She had become what the ancient guardians had always intended her to become, a living extension of their healing presence, a human embodiment of their transformative power, a walking stone circle that could bring their gifts to anyone ready to receive them. The circle was complete, but it was also ever expanding. Each person who found healing in her garden became a new stone in an invisible circle that spanned the globe. Each moment of peace, each recognition of love, each return to wholeness added another thread to the web of awakening that was slowly but inexorably transforming the world. Sarah smiled as she felt the familiar pulse of the cosmic heart beating within her own chest, the same rhythm that moved the stars in their courses and guided lost souls back to the source of their being. She was home, not in the sense of having arrived at a destination, but in the deeper sense of having remembered that love was always the ground of her being. That peace was always her natural state. That wholeness was always her true identity. The ancient stones had done their work well, and now their gift lived on in human form, walking among those who had forgotten their divine nature, and serving as a gentle reminder of the healing that was always available, the love that never ceased flowing, and the peace that could never be truly lost. The stone circle had opened its arms to a wounded seeker, and from that embrace had emerged a healed healer, ready to offer the same unconditional love to any who were ready to receive it. The work continued, the healing spread, and the ancient wisdom found new expressions in each generation of awakening souls. In the gathering twilight, as the first stars appeared overhead and the evening mist began to rise from the earth, Sarah closed her eyes and felt herself surrounded by the eternal presence of love. She was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. serving the great work of planetary healing one precious moment at a time.